Hello and welcome all in this video. So we are going to discuss about migration in fish. So in case of fish, there is a little migration is found in some species of the fish. So we have to focus on that particular fish species which can shows the migration. So today's video about the migration in fish. The migration means the movement of the fishes from one area of the water towards the another area, or from the fresh water to the sea water and sea water to fresh water. That can be called as a migration. That is the movement of the fish in search of food or for the feeding purpose. That is called as a migration. So in case of migration, this migration having different type. A seasonal migration. Some fish species shows the seasonal migration. It is a migration which can avoid the harsh condition of the season. That migration is called as seasonal migration. Second type of migration, that is called as latitudinal migration. Latitudinal migration that can be shows in case of some species of the fish like barracudas and swordfish. This fish species shows the latitudinal migration, that is this fish swordfish of the warm tropical seas perform latitudinal migration, that is moving to the north in spring and to the south in the autumn. That is this type of migration which is called latitudinal migration from warm tropical fish, that is swordfish moving from north towards the south, and that migration is called as latitudinal migration. Some fish species shows daily vertical migration. Daily vertical migration can be followed by some deep water fishes. Daily vertical migration. Some deep water fishes perform this type of migration called as daily vertical migration, that is from upper side towards the lower side and from the bottom towards the surface. The movement of this fish can be shows, that is called as daily vertical migration. Again there is having some migration that is called as potamodromy migration or potamodromy. Potamodromy means the migration limited to the freshwater areas only. Potamodromy migration means the migration within the freshwater area, within the large freshwater area. This type of migration can be shown by the fish, that is called as a potamodromy. Second type, that is called as oceanodromy, related to the like that of the potamodromy. Oceanodromy means the migration limited within the sea. The migration within the sea, that is called as a oceanodromy. Potamodromy means the migration limited to freshwater area, and oceanodromy, that is the migration limited within the sea, in between the sea water. Then again there is having diadromy. Diadromy means, however, the migration between the two areas, that migration from the sea, migration between the sea water and fresh water, that is called as a diadromy. Diadromy means the migration with the sea towards the fresh water and from fresh water areas to the sea water area, that is migration in between these two water areas, that is called as diadromy. This diadromy having again two types, that is first is called as catadromous migration. Catadromous migration means the movement of fishes from freshwater area to sea is called a seawater area, that is called as a catadromous migration. Catadromous migration means the movement of the fishes from freshwater area to the salt water, or that is the seawater area. It is for the spawning purpose. This migration can be takes place for the spawning purpose. The examples which can follow by some fish species, that is catadromous, is takes place in this freshwater fishes Anguilla. In the Anguilla, this type of catadromous migration is found, that is the movement of the fishes from freshwater area to the saltwater area. So this freshwater eel can move from the freshwater resources from the rivers towards the sea for the purpose of the spawning. Second type, that is called as anadromous migration. Anadromous migration means the movement of the fishes from salt water to fresh water, that is called the anadromous migration. Anadromous migration means the movement of fish from sea water, from the that is from the salt water or from the sea water to the fresh-water area, that is called as anadromous migration, which is the reverse to that of catadromous migration. And examples belonging to this anadromous migration, that is the salmon, striped bass, alosa, hilsa, and some trout can follow the anadromous migration. Again, they are having some migration type, that is amphidromous migration. Amphidromous migrations, this is a completely free movement between fresh water and marine water without any purpose. Without the purpose of breeding, this movement can take place in the fish species, that is called as amphidromous migration. Amphidromous migration means migration from sea water to fresh water area, and from reverse from fresh water to sea water area. It is called as amphidromous migration. This is the migration without the purpose of breeding. And examples of this amphidromous migratory fishes like megalopa, canos, these are the fishes which can migrate from the freshwater area towards the sea, and from reverse from the sea to the freshwater area. Again, now we have to focus on some important migratory fish which can which can follow this migration, or well-known species of the well-known migratory fish species. In that, first is the eels. This is the example of catadromous migration. This is the best example of catadromous migration. That is, the common species of eel like Anguilla rostrata of European freshwater river, and Anguilla rostrata of European freshwater river, and Anguilla vulgaris of America can show such a type of catadromous migration. That is, at the time of migration, which can be started in the autumn, the color of the fish species changes from yellow to metallic silver. The original color, yellow colored fish species, changes to the metallic silver colored. They can stop the feeding, eyes become the larger, snout becomes sharper. At the same time, the gonads are fully matured. Due to at the time of fully matured gonads, in that condition, they can change their color, they can stop the feeding, eyes become larger, snout becomes sharper, and they start the migration. At the time of migration, these silver eels enters the sea and covers about 4,500 kilometers. They can move 4,500 kilometers westward from Europe or eastward from America. They can migrate, they can cover a large area, that is large area, that is 4,500 kilometers from the westwards from Europe or eastwards from America. And finally, they meet the breeding ground or the breeding place in the Bermuda, that is Sargasso Sea of Bermuda. They reach finally, is the breeding place of this eel fish species. At the time of when they goes or reach to this particular area, breeding area, the adults will die immediately after the spawning. The eggs then hatched into little transparent leaf-like flattened larvae, and which are less than 6 mm long. These larvae are very small, about 6 mm long, and they have sharp needle-like teeth for the feeding. They can start the feeding after the hatching, and then they start to migrate to their home. At that time, during the journey to the home, they grow into the glass eels. They grow into the size called as glass eels, which are about 8 cm long, and these larvae are feed and grow to become yellow eels in some years. When they reach to their home, they can become the adults. So this is a well-known example of the migratory fish. Now there is another example of the migratory fish, that is salmon. This salmon, the species, there is a single species of Atlantic salmon, Salmo salar, and 5 species of Pacific salmon, Onchrohicus. These are some species of the salmon which can show the migration. these species can migrate, and this is example of anadromous migration. This is an example of, this is the best example of anadromous migration in the winter season. In winter, both the sexes leave their feeding grounds at sea and start to migrate towards the freshwater mountain streams. In the winter, both the sexes, male and female, they start migration, and they can leave their feeding ground and ascend to the freshwater mountain streams, which is a breeding ground of that particular fish species. They stop feeding, change color from silver to dull reddish brown. After spawning, the adult die, but some species of Atlantic salmon may survive, return to sea and spawn for second or third time in the life. So some species can retain to their or come to their main place or their feeding ground, and they can migrate about 2 to 3 times in their life. After hatching, the larval fish feeds and grow for some time in the streams, and then they goes into the sea, where they grow fast due to the abundance of the food material. So small fishes, then small fish larvae comes into their feeding areas and they grow into the size and become the adults. So these are 2 examples of these migratory fishes. This is all about the migration in the fish.